Welcome along everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this card, which I've called Just for Decoration. And I've used the Field Day collection, the Winter Trees collection and the Pointy Bauble stencil. Right, so we'll get going. As you can see, I've masked down my stencil. It looks a little bit severe, but the reason for this is because I want to make sure I get a nice fine line around the edge, so it keeps it closer to the it keeps the stencil closer to the card. And you'll also see I've already put three little cutouts on here, which is masking paper. I'm going to put another one up here, and this is where the light hits the bauble. I've tried other things, but I found masking paper is the best because you're going to be doing quite a lot of inking over this, so don't worry too much if it does lift up, because you can always mark it with a white pen when you've finished. So we'll get straight on. I'm going to be using Blueprint Sketch, which is a distress oxide, and I will put a full list of all the stamps, stencil and inks I've used in the comments section. So we're going to take a little bit of this and obviously onto a piece of scrap card. We're just going to rub a little bit off like we normally do, and then we're just going to pick out the shape around the edge of the bauble like this, just roughly at first, just to get the shape. Try not to go too far in though, because at the moment we just want to put the ink around the edge, and then again round this side and blend that in a little bit there where it's, and then I want to go in a little bit darker at the bottom here and where these little stickers are. So just try, I found it's easier if you go on top of them and then brush outwards like that. Just go gently around them, or whatever you're using to mask that off. And I say, if you don't want to do that, if you don't think that you'll be able to keep them down, then you just blend it as normal and then go over it again with a white Posca pen or even some white ink and dilute it down or something. And to be honest, you don't have to do that, but I think it makes the bauble look more authentic, because obviously when you get a shiny object or a metallic object and the light hits it, that's what we're trying to convey with that. So, and then the same on this side. So we're just going to go over the masking paper like that, and then bring it back down this side. And then I'm just going to bring it up a little bit here. But then as I go towards the middle, I want to just ease off a little bit, because I want to leave a little bit of white space in the middle where we're going to create our scene. So I'm just going to bring that down this side and then just gently shade in here. Now you see that what happened, that came right off, so I'm going to try and put it back on again, but it is fiddly, so we'll see at the end, see if we have to sort of mark it with a white pen. Okay, so now I'm going to take my versacraft black ink. Now this is, versacraft is quite opaque, so it should sit over the other ink. Mine is a very dry ink pad, because we don't really want a lot of this black. If you can see, it just gives a little edge, just a little bit of accent. So if you've got a brand new ink pad, or it's or a juicy ink pad, make sure you rub it well off onto a piece of scrap paper or card before you apply it to the card, because you don't really want a really thick black line around this. It's really more to add to the shading and give it a contrast. You can see already that's looking darker. The reason I like to do this is because you get the darker shades, but you still retain that blue where you don't want it so dark. So if I just use the darker blue, which I have done on another card, I'll show you at the end, you get a slightly different look. But so I'm just going to take a little bit more up into the middle there, and I'm going to go now to my Versacolor Indigo, and I'm just going to go around it all with that as well. Exactly the same as we did before. And I'm going to put a little bit more dark in this side. And I'm just going to bring that colour up a little bit there as well. And over there, I've got to be careful, that's the one I pulled off, isn't it? So I've got to be a little bit careful there. Okay. So then I'm going to take put those back, take the Versacolour Silver. And this is a beautiful silver. It dries like it looks in the pot, which sounds obvious, but sometimes inks don't. The only thing is, this takes quite a long time to dry, so I'm going to do this now. I'm just going to go into the fitting of the bauble and the little hook, and I'm just going to go over it again, making sure I've got plenty of ink in there, because it takes a little while to dry. At the end I'm going to run a fine liner around the edge there just to accentuate that, but I want to make sure the ink has plenty of time to dry. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my scene in the middle, and to do this I'm going to take a little bit of copier paper, and I want to stamp the tree, so I want to give myself a sort of horizon line which will be about here. So I'm taking the larger of the trees and I'm stamping it all over in the Versacraft black. And again, the same applies if you're using a really new ink pad that's very black. Just stamp it off first, because you don't want this. You want this to be quite subtle. And then I'm going over it with the indigo blue, and then just back over with the Versacraft black. Now, because sometimes it's quite difficult to stamp when you've got a stencil, because it doesn't always take, because you've got that little ridge. These are quite thin stencils, so that might not happen. But what I'm going to do is then take the stamp off the acrylic block, and now I'm using that as my horizon line, but I want to stamp this tree about there, just below the horizon line. So I'm just going to do it freehand, press firmly, and that's my tree. Now I want to add in a few more branches, so what I'm going to do is take my tree stamp, just dip the branches into the ink, and then just add some branches like that, and I'm going to do the same on the other side like that, and perhaps just one more in there like that. And then I'm going to take my other tree, the smaller of the two, do exactly the same, ink up in Versacraft black, I'll put it there so you can see, and then a little bit of the indigo blue, a bit more of the black, and then this one's going to go a little bit further back, but I still don't want it behind the horizon line. So if I'm doing the horizon line about there, I want this tree to go about there. So what I'm going to do is put the horizon line in like that, and then I'm going to stamp the tree, and then I'm going to take a fine liner, a 005, and I'm just going to add the bottom of the tree in, and then just go back up through the trunk to make that fit the shape like that. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to go up just where those haven't caught slightly, just join them up, and then I'm just going to add, and you can see all I'm doing is just a couple of wiggly lines, and then just shape that a little bit there like that. I'm just going to pin that so it shapes better. Okay, so there are our two trees, and we're going to put in the horizon line now. So I'm just going to cut this paper down a little bit because it's a little bit big to do a horizon line. So I'm just going to cut it down, and then I'm going to put it across there and take the indigo blue ink and then again just rub it off a little bit. Make sure you're not too far up those trees, you just want to be a little bit up so they're both this side of the horizon line, and then just rub that in like that. And then I'm going to take a little bit of versacraft black and just go over it just to accentuate. And as I said, I like to use the same sort of colours all the way through. Can you see now we've got the horizon line? Because I think it gives a continuity. Now I've cut another piece of a copy of paper just at an angle. So I'm going to put that one there, and I only really want it to come down to that tree because I'm going to put some bushes in the foreground. So we take the indigo blue and we just run it in a circular motion down like that, and then a little bit of the black again. There, can you see we put in a little hill at the back, and then I'm going to keep that there, and then I'm going to go in with the indigo blue but darker this time because I want to create the impression of some bushes at the back here, so I need the ink to be a lot stronger for this. So I'm just doing little circular motions. You've seen me do this in other videos, so it doesn't need a lot of, you see? And then I'm going to put another one here. So we put the flat line back, the horizon line, and then we do exactly the same here. And they sort of merge into the side of the bauble, like that. There, like that. And then what I'll do is, at the smaller of the tree stamps, I'm going to take off its acrylic block and dip it into the ink, and then I'm going to just do that again. So you see we're creating the illusion of some bushes there, and I'm going to do it with the other set of trees, but I'm going to stamp it off this time because I don't want those to be so prominent, like that. So that's our background in, and now we want to put our little fox in. So I'm going to stamp him in the versacraft back, and you can see I'm stamping quite hard, but I told you my ink pad's very dry, so again, you don't want this to be too dark. A little bit of indigo blue over the top, and then I'm going to go back with the black, and then we're going to put the fox about here. So we push him down and then just give the ink a little bit of time to absorb because it's got to go on top of other ink. So, and that's a good reason to use the indigo, the versacraft black, because it's more opaque than the versacolor. So we have our trees there. I'm just going to move that in, and if you want to, you can just put a little line around the fox like that. Now we've got our horizon line in now, so what I want to do is just run a little pen just there to accentuate. That's where our horizon line is. I don't want to do it with the other one, just that one. And now I'm going to do some shading around the tree and the fox. So we're going to take some indigo blue and just run that down from there like that, and then run the little shadow of the fox like that, and a little bit for this tree, but because this tree sort of runs out onto the stencil, you wouldn't necessarily see it, so I'm just going to add a little bit more blue for that one. like that. And then I'm going to take my jelly roll pen. Now ideally you would let this ink dry a little bit before you use this, because these jelly roll pens are, you know, sometimes they're a little bit unpredictable. You know, if you put them on top of wet ink, they don't seem to work very well. So we'll give it a go. But ideally, you know, if you've got time, just let this dry off a little bit, and then you can see I'm going into the branches. I'm going to add a little bit on there, and if you do find it's clogging up, just run it off onto a bit of card or paper. And then I'm going to do the same with this one here. Again, just to get rid of the this won't happen so much if you let your ink underneath dry first. And then I'm just going to do the same along the horizon line. Like that. Now also I've cut out a circle out of the masking paper to do a moon, so we're going to put that in there, and we're going to use some of the indigo blue that I already used, so we're just going to rub that round and then very gently around it. Like that. And then with while we've got that in place, we're going to take the white pen and just go around the edge there and the edge there, like that. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look and see. I just want to ground this tree a little bit more, so we're just going to do a little bit of a line leading up to it, and the same with this one and with the fox, because, you know, I think if you're going to stamp any animal or creature, you want it grounded, because you want to know that it's actually on the ground, it's not floating in the air. So I like to do that, so I'm just going to add a little bit of the white there, and maybe a little bit in the bushes. Okay, so now we go back with our fine liner to the top of the ball. Well, you remember I said I'm just going to go round the shape now like this, just carefully outlining it with the fine liner. It just helps to give it a little bit of definition. And also I found if you do this with the fine liner, it sort of embosses it a little bit, so it makes it stand out a little bit. I'm just going to rub that off as well. You have the same thing, because if the ink gets on the nib of your pen, it won't work so well, so I think that's okay. So now that's our scene finished, so we can remove this mask here. Now I don't want the moon to look, you know, just a white dot like that, so where the ink I've already used, I'm just going to gently rub that over, just to tone that down a little bit. And on the underside here, where the moon would be darker, I'm just going to rub that over like that. And then with my white pen, just going to try and even that up where it's not completely the right shape, like that. And then I'm going to remove these little masks. Like that. And again, we want those to be quite bright, because that's where the light's hitting, but I'm just going to tone that down a little bit, just so it looks more authentic, like it blends a little bit better. Okay, so there's our scene. So we remove all this masking tape. And when I've done that, I'm just going to wipe my hands, because I've got quite a lot of ink on them. And then I'm going to use the inside of the mask, this piece. Now ideally you would let this dry properly, because obviously putting this on now, if anything's wet it will smudge. So if you're doing this, make sure it's dry. But obviously we've got time constraints here, so I'm popping that over the top as perfectly fitted as I can. And then I'm going to take my blueprint sketch, do exactly like we've done before. So you dip your baby wipe in, rub it off onto some card, hold that in place with your hand, and then run it all the way around like this. Now, as I said to you before, less is more, because you can add. It's difficult to take away. So, you know, just if you're not happy, you think, oh, that looks too light, it's better because you can just add some more. Whereas if you start off and it's really heavy-handed, you won't be able to take it off, and you know, it might spoil the rest of your project. So just be, I mean, I don't know why I'm telling you all to be patient, because I'm the world's most impatient person, but it is a good tip, and I have learned to be more patient when I'm crafting. So we do exactly the same around the other side. I'm sorry, I might be blocking your view a bit here. Let me move my hand. It's hard for me to do this without actually holding on. I've got to hold on to the stencil. Now, if you let your project dry completely, you could put a little bit of removable tape on the back of this to hold it in place. But to be honest, I personally wouldn't do that, just in case it spoils your project. And the other thing is, you know, when you're doing this at home, you don't have to worry about filming it. So it doesn't matter if you move your hands around all over the place. And then that's a little bit darker that side, can you see? So I'm just want to make sure that doesn't look odd, to do the same the other side. And then maybe, oh, just make sure if it slips, you put it back in place, because we want that nice edge around it. That's the point of doing it. And I take that away, and it just gives that a little bit of a halo and covers up some of that white space, because some people are nervous of white space. I'm not particularly, I quite like it. But so that's the card finished. Obviously you've got room to put a sentiment. If you didn't want to do the scene, you don't feel confident, you could do the bauble and put a sentiment in the middle of it. So I'm just going to bring in my original here. You can see there's probably a little bit more black in this one, but that's entirely up to you. And just to show you, I did the same card in the Chip Sapphire Distress Oxide, and you get a darker look. Obviously it's the same card, but so you could do this in any colour you want to. You could do it in red, you can do it in green. Just make sure though, if you're doing it in the reds or greens, make sure your trees are dark. You know, don't do those in green or red, because I don't think it would work. But do those in black then. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to you joining me the next time. Thank you.